Coming up on Kochie's Business Builders, how to get the banks to say yes to your loan application, planning for growth, and restaurateurs Peter Liu and Nicole Galloway tell us their tips for success. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Business Builders. We've got a great lineup ahead of us over the next 30 minutes or so. Now, if you're a little sceptical about the future of online businesses, let me ask you a question. What are the most valuable media companies in Australia by market capitalisation? You might be surprised to learn that it's online recruitment business Seek.com. And 3 of the top 4 most valuable Australian media companies are all online businesses. So online commerce is here to stay and you've got to be part of it. Now, it's a pretty scary time financially and economically right around the world, and banks are starting to tighten their credit policies. Slowing economies in Europe, in the United States and China means that our banks are going into their bunker. They're tightening up on their credit. But for us small business owners, we need credit to thrive and to grow. So how do you get your bank to say yes to your loan application? Well, earlier in the studio, I caught up with our finance expert, Julia Bickerstaff, and she's got some great strategies for us. Julia, what do the banks look for?
Look for 3 main things. The first one is your ability to repay the loan and to manage the interest. That's obvious. The second one is they're very interested in how you as management run the business. And the third one is they want to see that you have got accurate financial information that they ask for, that you can give it to them on time and it looks good.
That relationship building with the bank, a lot of businesses really only talk to a call centre at the bank, or their business manager changes a lot. How do you woo on the personal side?
Well, that's the key. Coming back to that point about being able to demonstrate that you have got the ability to manage your business, you need to find someone to form a relationship with, and you need to work on that. And you need to be able to convince them that you know what you're doing with your business.
Is a bank looking at profit? Is it looking at sales? Or is it looking at cash flow?
Look, it wants the whole thing, really. It wants to see that you've got projections which show profit and the revenue off the profit margin off that revenue and how it links through to cash, but in a tight forecast way, so you haven't fiddled around with anything.
And I suppose consistency of performance, is that a key?
Well, absolutely. So what they'll look at is they'll look at your past financial performance and compare that with what you're predicting to happen. And anybody can put together some numbers that the bank might want to see. But you've got to make sure they're consistent with what's happened in the past. Otherwise, they're going to be asking you an awful lot of questions about what's happened this year.
So your experience with your clients, banks are still lending if you can meet that criteria?
Absolutely. And the absolute key one is demonstrating that you are managing and on top of your business.
Fabulous. Thanks for that. Some great advice there from Julia, and basically it boils down to that old-fashioned strategy of earning the bank's trust and giving them the confidence that you'll be able to repay the loan in the future. Up next on Business Builders, how to achieve growth without getting in over your head. It can be pretty challenging for any company to move from that start-up phase to the growth phase. But add in 30-odd head of buffalo and relocating hundreds of kilometres, and it can all become very daunting. That's exactly what our next company, Ausbuff Stuff, is doing, and we're there to help. Kim and Ian Massingham don't run your average food business. They produce dairy and meat products from their buffalo. Now, there's a big demand for their products, but they've been struggling to keep up with that demand on their current premises. I sent small business expert Linda Haley round to help them plan for the next step in their business.
What are the main issues with this amazing business of yours?
Well, to start with, the property that we're on is we've definitely outgrown it, and have done for the last year, but we've been looking and we've finally found another property, so
Great.
we'll end up with 6 or 7 times the amount of feed or more that we've got here. Another issue is that, again, with this place, that the zoning at the bottom here has changed into an environmental wetland, so we know we can't actually run a dairy out of that. With the demand that we've got now for meat, we need to be able to grow out the steers, so again, this property doesn't suit that. We've had some restaurants in that inquire. We can't go down that path at the moment because we can't supply, so...
Yeah, it's not until you can
we don't want to create something that we can't fulfil.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously this new property is going to make a big difference to your production capacity. So when you relocate to a regional area, quite often, or most councils actually have an economic development officer, and their job is to bring new businesses into town. So it doesn't matter whether you're a retailer or whether you're a farmer or a producer, that these guys' job is to help you get in there. And what they can do, and I've probably done exactly the same with you, is when you choose your property, they'll work with you to make sure that you're not going to have any problems with development applications.
Yeah.
They can tell you what funding's available. The other thing they can do is they can put you in touch with other local producers and introduce you into the network. Have you done any research on markets in the region?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. We've contacted the Coffs Harbour City Council and put an application in to do. They have a market on a Thursday there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, we could still do that market and still come back to Sydney again for the weekend.
Bellingen.
Yeah, Bellingen
Bellingen's
markets.
a big market up
Yep.
there, apparently.
Yep. Look, there's lots of terrific communities in that whole Northern Rivers area. I think one of the most important things as soon as you get to town is you need to start tapping into networks.
Yes.
There are lots and lots of really successful producers up there who are more than willing to share contacts and expertise. So what you'll find is that they will give you connections. The other thing I would really strongly start to look at is wholesaling, but rather than taking on the Sydney market straight away, I'd actually take on the regional market.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the wholesale.
Yeah. Once you've built up your network, in regional areas, it's actually much easier
Yeah.
to get into the city. Yeah. Because if you think about it, any major retailer is going to want to know that you've got consistency around your production, that you've got, you're able to deliver on time, every time. They're going to want to see a track record.
Yeah, sure.
And if you haven't got that at this point in time, then it's better off to start with the regional, who are a little more forgiving.
Yeah.
Also, online visibility. So you've had some really good publicity, but I noticed when I Googled Ausbuff stuff, guess what I found?
No website.
Nothing.
I know. Yeah.
All sorts of things you can do. A very, very simple website to start with would be great. You can also start a Google Place page.
Right.
But the nice thing about a Google Place page is you can get people to put reviews on it.
Oh, okay.
The other thing I think you're really going to need to have a look at is a plan. A really simple system I use is called vision planning. Just go for it. What's it going to look like? What's it going to, so who your market's going to be, what's your role going to be, what are the business goals in terms of turnover? So you know roughly what you do in sales at a market these days. So do you want to double that? Do you want to triple it? Start actually doing some forecasting. These are the sorts of things you need to start thinking about in your planning.
Look, some really wise advice there from Linda for any company moving from that start-up to the growth phase. The full interview is on the website. After the break, we hear from 2 young entrepreneurs about building their restaurant business.
This business tip brought to you by NAB. We see Australian business.
When evaluating the application of a small business for a business loan, banks will normally use the 3 C's of credit analysis. Number 1, and most importantly, is character. The banker has to make a judgment about you, your experience, and your commitment to repaying the loan. This is where your education, your experience, and your references are all considered by the business banker. Number 2 is capacity. This is the business's ability to repay the loan. Your application must discuss exactly how and when you will repay the loan, including revenue, expenses, and cash flow details. Be sure to include every possible repayment source you have. And finally is collateral. What forms of security can you provide? This could be property or equipment owned by you or your business, or a guarantee from someone who will pay the loan if you can't. That's why at NAB we have business bankers located at branches with the authority to make lending decisions. When you speak to one of our business bankers, you're speaking to the decision maker. And we know how important that is to small business.
Visit nab.com.au/small business for more information. You hear about restaurants closing down all the time, which makes the success of our next guests all the more fascinating. They've opened 3 restaurants in 3 years, which is quite a feat. Our entrepreneurs in the spotlight are Peter Liu and Nicole Galloway. Pete and Nicole opened their first restaurant, Kochie, back in 2010. With a fantastic approach to differentiating their business from competitors and building a great team culture, they've managed to successfully open 2 more restaurants since then. Pete, tell us how you got into the restaurant business.
When I first met Nicole, we decided that there was a real opportunity for a Chinese restaurant in Sydney. And then obviously from my uncle, who runs Chinese restaurants in Melbourne. And
Chinese restaurants. He runs the Flower Drum, which is the best Chinese restaurant in the country. And he helped you.
He definitely helped. We sent our chefs down there to train, and he, was very generous with all his recipes.
Shared the recipes, yeah.
So you started with the Chinese restaurant. You then started Barrio Chino, the Mexican one. You've just started a third in 3 years across the road. How have you coped with that sort of expansion?
In some ways, it's made things easier by having more.
Hands.
More hands, you get the economies of scale. You can employ more staff across the board that can help you out. I think we only recently got a full-time
reservation
team. We can now looking at getting a marketing person on board. When you only had 1 or 2, the cost probably wasn't worth it. But now you've got 3, we can split it across the 3 businesses.
How do you build the buzz around your restaurants? They have big followings. Do you have a process in terms of publicity and marketing?
I think it's much more stronger as well when you open up a restaurant not to build up too much hype, because I think at the end of the day, if you get busy straight away and you're ultimately going to let people down because you haven't tested your systems, your staff aren't experienced. We like to do it a much more slower, organic way. Build the strong ties with the customers, let them tell their friends, and then eventually get busier. I think the worst thing you can do is get busy too early and you're not ready for it.
But when you first started here, one of you basically had your full attention here, while the other one was at Kochie.
Yeah.
Now there are 3 restaurants. Does it mean you've got to think more about management?
100%.
Definitely. I mean, the way we want to run the new one is that we've got a really experienced manager on board, and he's got a really strong assistant manager, and that hopefully, with our overview, they can run by themselves, and we can still focus on these 2.
Yeah.
It is a huge risk, business-wise, to start a new business, but an enormous risk, relationship-wise, to start a new business on top of that.
Yeah.
How do you cope?
Nicole's more focused on the front of house. I'm more focused on the finance background, doing all the accounts, etc.
But the chefs that we deal with together, we have the exact same goals, ideas, motivations.
Our food philosophy is very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
So if you look back over the 3 years, the 3 key things that we can all take away from your success.
I think the first one, I think it's really important, is to have a point of difference. I think that's when we look to open up restaurants, your concept has to be extremely strong. Secondly, is take your opportunities. Every opportunity that came up, every space that came up, we jumped on it really, really quickly.
And number 3?
Our team, our staff.
It's a bit of a cliche, but yeah,
It
about
is.
our staff.
But it's true. They're the backbone of our business.
What a great example of a young couple coming up with a great idea, having the confidence to go ahead and do it, and then work their backside off to make it successful. As with all our entrepreneurs in the spotlight, the full interview is on the website, kochiesbusinessbuilders.com.au. Coming up next, it's time for Ask Kochie, where we take your questions and find a solution.
This segment brought to you by NAB. We see Australian business.
At NAB, we want to lend money to good quality businesses. That's what we do. I think what's important for our customers to understand though is how do we assess a loan application? Because if they understand that, they're much more likely to have success or at least get an answer very, very quickly. Some of the questions we're going to ask you when you're applying for a loan with us are things like, how much money do you need? And more importantly, what is the borrowing cause? What is the real root cause for why you're asking for this request? We'll look at things like, what is the industry or the business you're getting into? What are the associated risks with that business? What are your competitors doing? Do you have a clear strategy and marketing plan? There are 4 main things that a customer should always include in their loan application. Firstly, a business plan. Secondly, a cash flow forecast. Cash flow forecast is actually quite important to a bank because it helps us understand the right loan facility for the customer. Secondly, it helps us understand whether the customer can repay us in a timely fashion. And thirdly, it helps us understand whether it's the right thing for the customer to go into. We also look for security. Things like, is the house available to back up the loan, or a personal guarantee, or other assets, shares for example. And finally, we look to the client's statement of position, and that is simply a form that shows us what the customer owns and what the customer owes, and the net worth is the difference. There are 3 main reasons why loans are declined. Number 1 is insufficient financial data is supplied to assess the loan application. Number 2 is insufficient cash flow that can demonstrate the loan being repaid in a timely manner. And number 3 is insufficient security. Some things that our customers don't think of doing, and they should, is getting independent advice. So using their accountant or trusted financial advisor to provide them with input as to how to prepare their financial statements and their cash flow forecasts and to put their loan application together for the bank, because they often know exactly what is needed. This enables us to clearly understand what our customers' needs are and then tailor a financial solution to help them achieve their goals. And that's vitally important to us.
Visit nab.com.au/small business for more information.
It's Tech Tip Time with Val Quinn.
A lot of people don't spend much time thinking about the wireless network that connects their office devices together. But you should really pay attention to this at least every couple of years, because as new technology comes out, you can get better wireless performance, and that really increases your productivity. Now, there's a new Wi-Fi standard that you should definitely keep your eye open for. It's called the 802.11ac standard, and it's expected that by 2015, up to 1 billion devices like routers, phones, tablets, etc. will be deployed with this technology. Now, the thing I love about 802.11ac is that it can be up to 10 times faster than the Wi-Fi networks we're working on today. Plus, it gets better range. So this means you can stream HD movies to multiple devices, transfer huge backup files, and even connect more clients to your network. Just one quick word of warning though, 802.11ac isn't quite finished yet, even though you can buy the devices today. So it might be worth waiting until January, until the standard's ratified, before you put an 802.11ac device in your office.
Welcome back to the program. Now it's time to answer some of your questions that you sent through the website or on Facebook and Twitter. Keep them coming. We love hearing from you. First up from Sash, saying, just wondering if you have any advice about how to approach strangers at a business level. I'm just starting out importing sapphires and would like to know how to introduce myself to jewellers. Sash, cold calling can be very daunting. The first thing you should do is think about the message that you want to get across to these potential customers. Even write yourself a script, a bit of a screed, a bit of a story on what you want to tell these potential customers, and just keep rehearsing it until you get it right. And then at networking functions or when you go and visit the jewellers, stick with the script, but then start asking potential customers what they want, what you can do for them, how your product could help them. Not only is it important to get your message across, it's also important to listen. Now, we have lots of stories on the website under the sales and marketing section of the KBB website on cold calling, so go and get some tips there. Amelia writes in saying, we'd love some advice on the marketing sales funnel we should create with our customers when they enter our business through purchasing or using our lead capturing system. Your first step is to take a look at the range of CRM software systems out there, customer relationship management systems, and they're customer databases that allow you to track your customers' activity and also work out things like the lifetime value of a customer. The sales funnel was covered by Rob Hartnett when he did the interview with the girls from Schmoozely a couple of weeks ago on the show. Now, his explanation on how to manage the sales funnel, we couldn't fit into the episode, but it is in the extended interview on the website. So the Schmoozely interview with Rob Hartnett, that's where you need to go to. Well, thank you for all your questions. We'll do more next week. And don't forget, if you want to get your business online, KBB Web in a Box is for you. It is a step-by-step process where you can build your own online website for your business, which is even mobile enabled. It allows you to do everything from uploading videos to even an online shopping store. So go to the website, KBB in a Box. We'll catch you next week. Next week on KBB, the secrets behind a thriving family business. Making the most of that Christmas sales period and standing out in a market dominated by big players.